My favorite is the spicy beef by... I'm not going to say.
No, you have to.
No, not sponsored, not sponsored.
Oh, okay. Welcome to Gen Now Podcast. Today, I'm hosting Kelsey, and
my name is Reagan.
This is our special guest, Jeremiah Dupree, the one and only. I thought a perfect starting question for you would be,
okay.
What is your, for all of us, we can only answer if you want, but like, what's your favorite historical time period? And why?
Favorite historical time period? That's really interesting. There are a lot of good time periods. When it comes to my favorite, though, I like the ancient China dynasties. Those were pretty interesting. At the same time, I would say, like, during that same period would be ancient civilizations around, like, Mesopotamia. So if I had to say, I'd probably just say, like, the ancient era.
Yeah, some of like the first civilizations, like when civilization just first came out.
Like the Assyrians and...
Is there a reason?
I gotcha.
I just like it.
Okay.
It's like the foundational of like philosophical thought in China, and then people trying to figure out and how to win wars with different types of metals and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like the basics when the foundation was being
OG
discovered.
Civilizations that, everyone else copied off.
Right,
Yeah.
Okay, Reagan,
I gotcha.
What's yours?
You're going to want to bring your microphone closer to your mouth.
Now, because right now is like the best time to be alive. I mean, we have access to so much different... What?
You got to bring your microphone up.
Oh, sorry. Here we go. Is this good?
A little bit closer. There you go.
Like right here?
Yep. It's actually,
Oh, okay. Well, probably right now, because like, obviously we live in a time of such abundance, and like we have access to medicine and technology that really helps us a lot, but that might be a little bit of a boring answer, so I might go with maybe like the Industrial Revolution, because that's like
a good answer.
Yeah, because that's when like everything started ramping up, and like we started getting our like basic technology and like machinery that sort of forged the backbone of
That's also really interesting, because a couple years before that, feudalism was happening in Europe. So one clarification I would like to ask is, are you talking about industrialization in the U.S.?
Yeah, U.S.
Okay. So that's like 20 or 30 years later.
Yeah.
But industrialization in Europe was fantastic, because that's when feudalism started in Europe. And coincidentally, just by like chance, even though the British Empire was really big and had influence everywhere, feudalism also started in Japan.
Okay.
And the samurais were still alive.
Okay.
So that was really interesting.
Yeah, wasn't like Japan one of the first like Asian countries to start industrializing?
They were. Yeah,
okay,
that's why they invaded. That's one of the reasons why they invaded China and the other islands, was to get resources.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Interesting.
What about you, Kelsey?
I would say the 1860s to 1890s, because of the fashion.
Okay.
The dresses, the style, everything was very intricate, the hair, but...
I gotcha. Yeah.
Otherwise...
In Britain, was that like the Victorian era, or was that earlier or later?
Well, it's like multiple eras.
That's more
eras.
like 19.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
like there's multiple time evolutions.
Well, no. I think you're right. I think I'm wrong, actually.
I have no idea.
I'm wrong.
I'm not a historian.
Wow, that's crazy.
So,
Just admit you were wrong.
Yeah.
All right.
I was thinking of Queen Elizabeth.
The Queen Elizabeth era.
Should we get started with our first question?
Yeah, sure.
We've been started.
Okay. Alrighty. See how it is. Why is having knowledge and wisdom important, Jeremiah, in your opinion? Give you a moment.
That's a great question. I think that's a great question. I think a better question is, why is pursuing wisdom and knowledge important? Can I change the question?
Yes, you can.
Okay. I'm changing the question. I think pursuing, because here's the reason why I'm changing the question for our viewers at home. I was pointing at the wrong camera. I'm sorry. It's this camera right there. Hello.
Right there. That's you guys.
I feel like everybody has a set amount of knowledge that they've grown up in because of their environment, whatever experiences they have. But pursuing to increase that wisdom and knowledge is important, because the value that you provide to the body of Christ, or to our atheist and agnostic listeners, the value that you provide to society is going to only increase with your ability of knowing things. And you need to know things because this is how we have conversations. Mm-hmm. And in the conversations, the more depth you can go into, the better people are going to walk away with increasing their knowledge and wisdom. Right?
I gotcha.
So this is why people like podcasts. Like Elon Musk goes on Joe Rogan, and people hear about things that they never would have thought of before.
Yeah.
Like rocket ships, going to Mars. What is that even like? And it's like interesting to them.
Yeah.
So pursuing wisdom and knowledge through podcasts or reading books, educating yourself is, I would say, pretty important.
I gotcha.
As like a basic answer.
So I guess I have a question, like, how do you think the knowledge that one grows up in, sort of like the base of knowledge that a person or an individual would like grow up in, affect like their lives in a way, you know?
Sure.
Like if they never like go outside of the box they grew up in, if that makes sense, you know, knowledge-wise.
How much does it, how much does your environment growing up affect you?
Yeah, and like the knowledge in that environment, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how does the wisdom and knowledge you acquired in the environment that you grew up in affect you as you grew up? I would say it's very important. And for a lot of people, if they grow up in a harsh environment or a tense environment, it can be something they have to work through for the rest of their lives. And the same thing for a good environment. This is something you still have to process every single day, but the thing you're processing is either going to have a net positive. It's going to be a little bit easier because you're dealing with a positive experience versus a negative experience, right? So for instance, let's say you grew up in a home with a single mom and you guys didn't have a lot of money. So let's say you grew up, and because you guys didn't have a lot of money when you were growing up, you just save everything you have to the point where it's dangerous, right? And you're like buying ramen every week, even though you have a couple racks in your bank account.
Yeah.
You could be buying at least some bread.
Something, you know, a little more healthy than ramen, you know.
Right.
I don't think that's the healthiest option you have, you know.
Right, yeah.
But it's cheap.
I mean, maybe if you're like in college and you don't like have enough money to like live.
Yeah, shout out all the college friends.
All the college people that are living in their dorms eating ramen, you know?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. My favorite is the spicy beef by, I'm not going to say.
No, you have to.
No, we're not sponsored.
Oh, okay.
Spicy beef.
I think I'm more of just like a plain old chicken type person, you know, just the basic ramen, you know?
Right.
Yeah, instant ramen.
Yep.
That's fun. For you guys.
I mean, if anyone's like low in their sodium, maybe eating ramen would be a healthy thing. Like,
you know, if I was low in sodium, I would rather have a box of chicken nuggets from McDonald's and a medium fry. We have a live audience here. They were they were surprised by that.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of like took them aback, you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
They thought I was going to say ramen.
Anyways.
Back on topic now. So you said
we're always on topic.
Why we should pursue wisdom knowledge. What does that look like and how? Like, how can you walk that out?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that question. I would say reading is going to be your number one way in pursuing wisdom and knowledge, but reading good books. And the only way you're going to be able to know it's a good book is if you start reading. I know it's a little bit circular of an answer, but that's how you know. You're not going to know what a good car is until you've seen another car that's good, right? You're not going to know what a good cheeseburger tastes like until you've eaten a good cheeseburger, right? If you grew up and all you ate was McDonald's, and then one day you got invited by Ray Lewis, legend, to a Gordon Ramsay American food chain, and Gordon Ramsay himself made you the best American cheeseburger ever, you would eat it and be like, well, that's pretty good, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe this McDonald's wasn't as great as I thought it was my entire life, right?
It's a good analogy.
So
I like that.
I would read as much as you can, because in pursuing that wisdom and knowledge in the book from the author, you're also sharpening your own speaking skills. It's been shown through studies, and I can't quote them here because I don't have them on hand, but the more you read, the more articulate you will be. You know,
I got you.
because you're more used to just like you being with the language.
So what age did you start doing that then? Can I ask, like, when did you start pursuing, and like what drove you to start pursuing knowledge and wisdom?
I would say, and I'm not like the master wisdom person, but when I was young, my dad, he would always be like, read books, listen to podcasts, do whatever you need to do to like just get knowledge, be informed. That was his thing. We'd have, not to get like political, we'd have like talks about politics in the car, or like orchestra stuff, or like music, just all the time. We were always talking about something, which ingrained into me to always be thinking about something. So we would play this game in the car where he would put on the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, one of the best orchestras in the world, and he would be like, okay, in this song at this section right now, what instruments are playing? And that would be like the beginning of me to like just be analyzing whatever is going on around me.
So like your dad kind of trained you to analyze things a little more,
right?
Like through your childhood and everything. I like that.
Yeah, and he would give me, so that's one of the things we'd do.
Good parenting advice, I guess, you know?
Right. Yeah. He would also give me like he gave me a book, The Chronicles of Narnia, when I was super young. I was like not ready to read this book. It was Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but I wasn't ready. I was too young to like understand what was going on. I was maybe like 4, maybe 5, 6, probably 6, and I read the first page and I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. This is kind of cool, but whatever. And he's like, okay, what did you get out of that? So immediately, if you're familiar with Simon Sinek, he has the idea of the golden circle, you know, and the golden circle is a lot of people know what they're doing, they know how they're doing it, but they don't know why they're doing it. So from a young age, my dad, he didn't know about the golden circle yet at this time. The idea would be later formalized, but the concept, he would instill from a young age to know why you're doing what you're doing, how you're doing what you're doing, and what it is what you're doing.
Yeah, kind of establish like the relevance of what you're doing.
Right.
I guess I can definitely see how that would really help one learn, you know, like in general, just knowing like why you are learning this. And kind of going off on a tangent, I feel like sometimes like education today can sometimes lack on that, you know, like, okay, why are we actually learning what we're learning? Why is this important? You know, I feel like if you don't establish that relevance, like you're just not going to be able to learn as like effectively as you maybe want to, you know, like.
Sure. On that point though, I would say, I think a lot of the time when it comes to the education system, we need to be teaching more of what people need to know versus why they need to know it. Right now, in recent years, the education system, at least in the United States, has been teaching kids why they need to know what they know with like social emotional learning, or like, I forget what it's called, but like CRT, critical race theory and stuff like this, right? They're teaching kids like the why.
Oh, I gotcha.
Rather, they're not teaching them what they need to know, because you can't skip to why without knowing what and how first.
Okay, no, I got you.
Even though why is the most important, if you're not doing what and how, your why doesn't matter.
Yeah, I got you.
You just have an idea that you're trying to sell people, but it has no substance.
Yeah, I feel like I'm talking a little more maybe about like math or something like that, where it's like you're sitting down and learning all this complex theory, and it's like, why do I even need to know this, you know? Maybe that's kind of more what I was thinking, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
just for a little bit more context before I bounce off of that, I was saying, because if we're teaching 4th graders about race, but they don't understand the fundamentals of the English language, then we're wasting our time.
Yeah.
It's important later to do that, but we need to take steps. But then you said math and stuff like that. I would even say a lot of this is going to come down to having good teachers or like good role models around you that can, through their actions, show you why you're learning this.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
If you've ever had a good teacher at school or like in a church or at college or whatever, college people, then you know that through how the teacher or the professor is teaching through their body language and their tone and their passion for the issue or the education that they're preaching, if you will, then because of that nature itself, then you know why it's important.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of teachers go to school and they're passionate about teaching kids and like lifting up kids.
Yeah.
But the topic they're teaching on, they're not as passionate about. They're more passionate for the kids than they are for like teaching, I don't know, biology.
I gotcha.
So
that makes a lot of sense. Like if you want to inspire kids, to learn something, or like take a specific course of action, you got to be inspired yourself. You got to want to do it yourself. And if kids don't see that in the teachers, they're probably not gonna. It's not a good example,
yeah.
Yeah.
Any thoughts, Kelsey?
Thoughts? No, I really agree with the teaching and passion. I mean, like, I think it's one of the biggest things in my life that changed me is when I had teachers come in and were like they were passionate about what they were doing and like genuine. Definitely changes things, but I guess this just made me think about like, would you say with like teaching or like that kind of thing, would you need passion with it? Is like does knowledge and getting that desire come from a passion, or can a passion come from that? Do you understand the question?
Yeah. I've kind of wondered about that myself,
Kind of.
like the relationship between like gaining knowledge and passion, and yeah.
I don't know. I just think about like,
That's a good question.
yeah, there are some people that like, they just love learning and it's all they want to do. They just want to get as much information as possible. That's just how their brain works. And then there's others where it's like, takes a lot more effort and intention and like intentionality.
Yeah. I think,
Just a thought.
I think I definitely understand what you're talking about, because I think like some people have more of like I think a lot of the times like people can have a passion for like learning, but then also people can have passion for like particular topics that drive them to learn a lot about them. And I guess it'd be really useful to know like maybe how to stir up passions like that, like a passion to want to learn something so that you've got the motivation to help you in your learning.
Yeah. I would say passion, I think, is temporary.
You
It's
really
temporary.
think that?
I think passion is temporary. It's like a moment by moment feeling.
Yeah, like on or off,
At the end of the day, you could have been passionate about your work for a couple hours, but then now you're into the discipline of it. So sometimes motivation will get you as a kickstart. Passion will get you as a kickstart to doing something, but what keeps you going is the discipline. So like we were talking about earlier with the cheeseburgers, let's just run it back and do it a little bit more philosophical. Somebody's not going to understand that they like C.S. Lewis until they start to read C.S. Lewis. And through that author, they might understand, oh, maybe it's not that I just like C.S. Lewis's ideas. I like reading books. I like talking about ideas. I like talking about philosophy, and then so on and so forth. But I would say finding something that people like and then pursuing knowledge in that field, then it'll begin to have a circular effect.
Okay.
And it like begins to feed itself. That's what I've noticed, at least for me.
What would you say yours are? Your passions and stuff?
I was actually just thinking how much I hated math growing up. I was so bad at math, and the only reason I ever took a summer course on math was to stay with my friends. And I did not cheat.
Promise?
Right, right.
Yeah, I gotcha.
If you put your hand on this Bible right here, right now.
Yeah, you got to swear
I'm
on
not
the
gonna
Bible,
do that.
Okay.
It says not to do that in the Bible, actually.
Oh. Yeah, no, I definitely agree, because I feel like math,
No,
again,
I cheated. I'm sorry.
like I struggled so much with math because it was just a bunch of like theory, and I just kind of struggled like understanding what's the actual practical application. Why do I need this? But then later on, I definitely started taking more interest in like science, just in general, and that's when the relevance of the math started to kick in.
Yeah.
And like I actually knew why I needed to learn math, why it was important.
Yeah. I would say though, the topics that interest me the most are, in no particular order, music in general. I really like music as a creative expression and hearing other people's creative ideas. Especially since music transcends language.
Yeah.
It's like a language of itself.
Yeah.
And it's in it of itself. I also like history because it's just a story. A lot of people take it as like, I'm just learning these facts.
Yeah, it's like
So
the lore of reality.
Yeah.
In other words, you know?
That's a good way to
No, it
describe
really is. It really
I
is.
love that.
And the more you understand history, the more you can talk about it with other people. Because if you don't understand how we got here and how things built up until this moment, then you're just starting from zero. You're starting from scratch. And you're putting yourself at a disadvantage across the board.
Yeah, because there's like so many things you could have learned from history that you're not applying.
You could
or
be
like,
building on somebody else's tower instead of making your own. Like, for instance, when the Library of Alexandria burnt down after the drunken rage, if you will, from a certain leader, you know who you are.
yeah, we know who
He's
you
dead.
are.
He's long dead.
Why?
We still know who you are, though.
But it's theorized that in that time, in the Hellenistic times of Alexander, that they had electricity, they had computers, that they had cars, that they had like discovered how to build a steam engine way before we recreated it in the Industrial Revolution. So when the library was burnt down, they had to start all over. You know, it was just devastating. People, like historians, think about this all the time. Where would we be if the library didn't burn down?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, yeah.
Like, I've heard that. I've heard about that.
It would have been crazy because we might have been able to go to space 100, 200, maybe 300 years sooner. Like, that's crazy.
It's like all that progress got burnt down, in other words, basically.
Right, yeah. So, point being, if you're able to use other people's experiences, other people's wisdom
and knowledge,
and their knowledge,
Yeah.
then you can apply that to yourself and then build on their life's work to build your life's work.
I like that. I like that. And I guess kind of going back a little bit to what we were previously talking about, like motivation and passion to learn. I think I once recalled you saying like that motivation and passion is like a product of discipline. Is that, would you say like you agree with that? Like,
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Because he said that?
Yeah.
Well, like, I was just saying, yeah.
Yeah, I would say you might be passionate for something before you're disciplined, but when the reason the passion is going to come back is because you are disciplined.
It's because you're disciplined. I got you. That makes sense.
Yeah. Passion only does so much. If anybody who ever says, I'm going to work out, you know, they watch The Rock or like Sebum go on the weightlifting show and do the competition, and they're up there just like ripped, and they look like, wow, that guy's so powerful. And they're like, I'm going to do that too. Like in that moment, they're like motivated. They're passionate for this thing. But the next day they wake up, they're hungry. They go to the fridge. Oh, it's empty.
I find that very relatable.
I have my phone. I saw an ad for DoorDash, free delivery. Let's hit it. You know what I mean?
Oh, yep.
That's how it started.
I find that very relatable. Like, especially like with my own learning experiences with like knowledge. Like there are times where it's like, I first start out like learning a topic or whatever, like maybe like about science. So for example, maybe space. Yep. Because like maybe I see it in like a YouTube video or something really cool, or maybe it could be in the movies or something like that. And like I'm really motivated to like learn about it for like a week maybe, and then it goes away. And it's like I still want to be motivated, but it's like now it's time to be disciplined, you know?
I think about like the Bible. Like when you're reading your Bible, that's like how it goes. Like you can start off with a passion for like loving Jesus and wanting to learn more about him.
Yeah.
And then that slowly fades and you have to have that discipline.
Right.
And you go in like spurts of like kind of back and forth in a sense in a lot of ways. Like, but because you're keeping that discipline, totally changes it.
I totally agree with that, yeah.
I've actually thought about this. What are some key cultural or historical points in the Bible that most people like overlook them and they kind of like connect with history, like worldly history?
Sure.
Like, just
I
give
would
me one
say
or two.
this is another reason. Whoa, sorry. This is another reason why pursuing wisdom and knowledge is important, is because, especially with history or just like cultural things, you're able to line up different events across history.
Yeah.
So if, let's say, I took an AP World History class, and I think it was 10th grade or 11th grade, that gave me the broad overview of everything.
Yeah.
From 0 to like 1950 or so. So when I was able to take that knowledge and bring it to the Bible, I was able to kind of understand what was going on in China,
Yeah.
what's going on in the Mesopotamia and like the Mediterranean area, what's going on in Europe, what's going on in North America, and so on and so forth. With the Bible, I would say some key things if you ever want to like really begin to understand post-Judges, major prophets, minor prophets, you would really need to begin to understand like the Babylonian Empire, the Persian Empire. Even you could even go back a little bit into like the empires that Israel was fighting themselves and learn about those, and just how things began to shake out in the civilizations in that region. Because through this, just like as a little fact, if you go back far enough, in the desert, for instance, when the Israelites were going through the wilderness in Exodus, in Numbers, in Leviticus, the reason that they received some commandments aren't clear to us today. But if you go back in history and understand the culture, you'll understand that
There was problems.
there was things that God had to address.
Yeah.
Like there was a point where the Israelites were told by God, you need to dig holes in the ground and you need to go bathroom in the ground.
You need a what?
Go to the bathroom in the ground.
Oh, in the
Not
ground.
just like,
Wow, that's in
Everywhere.
the Bible?
yeah.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yep.
Isn't that crazy?
There's also another portion where a lot of people who are anti-God, they'll point and say, he's a patriarchal dictator because he wants to hide women after childbirth.
Yeah.
Go hide them and like guard them. But the reason was, in the desert, if you look at a lot of these places, there's two reasons. The first reason is you're in a desert. First of all, you're in a desert. There's no civilizations around. There's no water. Things can go bad very quickly.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
You know, after going through such an intense process like that, you know, there's a lot of blood.
Yeah.
And you can get a disease very easily.
No, I get you. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's number one reason. It's
number
just
two.
sanitary.
Yeah.
Number two, there were tribes nearby that lived in this desert, and because we live in a fallen world, they were worshiping idols and so on and so forth. As time progresses, the Israelites get in this desert, and the neighboring tribes are like cannibals,
Yeah. Oh,
or
I
they
was just.
sacrifice to like idols.
Yes, I was just
or, like,
reading about this.
so on and so
Oh,
forth,
wow.
right?
Yeah.
And God says, hide your women and children, especially the women after they've given birth,
Oh, that makes sense now.
because
Yeah.
Or
these,
just-
these demon tribes, the demon worshipping tribes, will come and try to find these women and kids and use them to sacrifice on their altars.
Yeah, they would like
Oh, my.
kill them. Like,
Yeah.
I was just literally
Wow.
reading about this yesterday. That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting thing to read about.
I guess like that makes it like the contents of the books of like Leviticus and Numbers, like I guess it makes it more understandable, like the purpose of like all these strange laws and everything, because I've always wondered, like, why does the Bible have all of these weird laws in them? Like, why are they relevant?
Right.
But
yeah.
I guess like when you understand the context of it, like why the Israelites had these specific weird laws, you know, it makes a little more sense now. Like why, like it says like do this, don't do this, do these like strange weird things, you know, it's because there's reasons for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't remember what the original question was, but I hope I
the
answered it.
original question, yeah. What were key cultural, historical moments?
Oh, yeah, sure. So, like, yeah, study Babylon, I think, is a big one because that'll lead you to understand what's going on there. I would, as like a broad definition, just study, if you have the heart that's like protected, you know the word, and you have a relationship with Jesus, I would go and study paganism and like demonism, because you'll understand why things, even like today, as much as like today is similarly like a mirror to what Israel was doing at that time, with all of the bad things and the judgment that God had to put on them. If you go back to Genesis, I think it's Genesis 6 with Noah's flood, and you follow all of that through, you can see there's giants that existed through the flood. I think there's scholars who believe that they came through one of Noah's sons, and that's why Noah cursed one of his grandsons, not his son, because he was showing signs of that giant bloodline, because Noah was the only one pure in all of his generations.
Okay, I got you.
So there's also giants, especially, I forget the mountain that they're talking about. There's a mountain that they all resided at, and that's one of the things that Joshua had to fight as a general of the Israel army and as a judge of the Israel entirely. So they would be fighting like literal Nephilim and like demons and giants, and then they'd be fighting these tribes that worship demons and idols. So it was more than just me going over to your house and being like, I want your house, leave. It wasn't that. It was a lot more deep than what people are understanding it to be.
There's a lot more context to it.
Right.
I got you.
Yeah.
Would you say that like context in the Bible is one of like the most important things when reading it, like, and that's why you should also do all the studying and stuff for like knowledge?
Yeah, I think you can get by understanding what a verse is within the context of the verses around it, and within the context of the chapter and why the author is writing that chapter, especially with Paul in his epistles to churches, or understanding why God had this prophet go and say this prophecy. You can understand a lot. If you understand also with that, within the context of the Bible, if you also understand the context of history, it'll just open an entire new understanding to you. Like with Revelation or with Thessalonians, when they're talking about the end times in these churches in specific areas like Smyrna. I think it's Smyrna that had a city with high walls, and they were very well defended, but it says to keep watch lest you get overtaken, something to that effect. And the reason was because Smyrna had high walls. They knew they would never get attacked by this side on this part of their city until they did, because they weren't keeping watch of their walls. So it was a historical example that many people knew around that time to push forward a spiritual point that, like this city that fell, I don't know if it was actually Smyrna or not, but if it is, then cool. But like this city that was overtaken because they weren't paying attention, you too, in your spiritual sense, can be overtaken if you weren't paying attention to what the devil's doing, if you're not praying, if you're not doing your stuff with Jesus every day.
So that's a good reason to be well studied, and have a lot of knowledge too, is I guess for like reading the Bible and understanding that context that can sometimes be filtered out.
Right. Yep.
Okay, I see.
Yep. And especially like, real quick, it just,
go ahead.
Helps answer questions that people will have, like, why did Jesus get baptized, right? Well, because I brought up the question, I'll just answer it. Because there were prophecies, number one, Jesus had to fulfill. And then number two, it was unto John's baptism, because that was part of the prophecy. And there are a couple more answers, but those are, from my understanding, the big ones. It's just fulfilling that prophecy for both John and for himself as the Messiah.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a good point. With that, kind of, and you finding all of this information, what would you say is like your biggest challenge that you've had with like just understanding knowledge and like around that? And what advice would you give to the people who are maybe doing what you started doing at that age?
I would say this is a road that is a very long road, and you're going to be walking this road until you meet Jesus. There's infinite knowledge, and it's going to be interesting for you to begin this process, but you can do it. You should, if you're not saved, accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior.
Step number one.
Because it really all starts with that. Your entire view of knowledge and wisdom changes.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
So, can you ask the question again?
Yeah, what was the biggest challenge you had, like starting and like walking out this path of like discovering and learning like wisdom and knowledge and just.
I feel like the biggest challenge I had was just finding sources. And then the second biggest challenge didn't come until later when I had more than when I started, more knowledge than when I started. And it really became more like imposter syndrome.
Okay. In what way?
So I would be around people that studied and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, I've studied too, but I don't know what they know. How much more do they know than I do? Am I actually studied in this? Am I just here because I know more than the average person? But, you know, so I don't belong here, the average thing, right? But I still deal with that in some ways today with like listening to scholars today talk about like church history, for example, because that's what I'm studying right now, in an attempt to get ready for another teaching. But yeah, just you have to keep your focus in your soul centered on Jesus. If you want to pursue knowledge, you just have to like let everything go, essentially, and just pursue it. You know, the Bible says in multiple places, James, Timothy, other places also, you know,
Proverbs.
Pursue knowledge. You know, yeah, Proverbs, you know.
It says it all over.
Wisdom is the principal thing, you know.
Yeah.
Get wisdom, get understanding, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So would that be like your suggestion to people if there's like that's what if they're on this journey? What would be your like number one thing that you would tell people?
The number one thing I would
Starting
tell
off.
people, I would say, is go to Barnes and Noble and buy a history book. And then the second thing I would say is read the Bible. Yeah. If you're a Christian, read the Bible first. If you're not Christian, read the Bible first. If you're not going to buy a Bible or read the Bible, go get a history book.
Okay. Reagan, you got anything else?
No, I think we're good. I think we covered a lot of ground today.
All right. Thanks for listening, guys.
Yep.
We'll see you next week.
Peace.
All right, see you next week.